I will assess like what one is on special and what's the price per unit based on all the different sizes and what brand am I going to get so that it's the cheapest. I do that, like constant mental maths.
Yeah. Like especially for eggs.
I do it for everything though.
Yeah,
you have to. I just otherwise feel like I don't know, getting cheated by the system. Whereas Luke's more of a like, I'll just grab one and if it's on special, great. But like, I'll just kind of grab the thing and not think about it so much.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I'm with you in this camp.
Thank
Definitely
you.
got to do the mental math. So I reckon it all adds up. It's also like using countdown cards, you know, like and getting the discounts and stuff. Okay, I don't use it. This has changed my life.
But Christine,
it's because I always go shopping with Ollie and he always has his and I'm like, fine.
But you could link them together. And they have an app now. It's so good. The rewards thing.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, I honestly, my biggest life regret since moving to New Zealand is not getting a countdown rewards card for the first 5 years that we lived here. Kind of just thinking that they're a scam.
Welcome to It's No Secret, a podcast for Kiwis who want their money questions answered.
Ready, steady, go.
This podcast will answer the money questions you may or may not have on your mind. We'll talk to real Kiwis and share truths about our own financial lives.
Both the successes and the failures. Because the truth is, there is no secret to achieving financial freedom.
Hello and welcome to It's No Secret. I'm Christine.
And I'm Kat.
And today we're going to run through a few money tips to help you get through tough financial times. So it's a bit of a challenging time out there right now for a lot of people. Interest rates have risen and remained high for quite some time. And according to our friend Adrian Orr, they're potentially, here to stay for a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. Therefore, those who also own homes might particularly be struggling right now to cover the cost of their mortgages, but generally cost of living is very high. So we thought we'd like to shed some light on things that you can do to either increase your income, decrease your expenses, or just take advantage of the free stuff out there, both potentially with your employer, the government, and otherwise.
Yeah.
Tips and tricks, really. So,
love this.
Yeah, excited to dig into this one.
Yes.
We have lots of tips.
Yeah.
Let's start with decreasing expenses, because I think as a nation and Kiwis, we tend to go to that first, where we're like, okay, what can we cut, and potentially not just think about increasing income.
Yeah.
So the first one is the age-old sit down and go through your expenses. 3 months, 6 months worth of expenses, and try to identify anything that you can cut out. So that's things like eating out, Ubers, Netflix, all non-essential items.
Yep.
So that's a really good place to start.
Yes.
And then what about, this is a bit of a segue, but what about renting your house out and going renting yourself? So if you are someone that has a mortgage, we'd probably need to run the numbers on this one, because it's more complex than literally just saying, well, then make someone else pay your mortgage.
Yes.
Especially depending on what you can get market rate for that rent of the house.
Yeah.
But have you heard of is this a viable option? Or
I think it's definitely a viable option, particularly if you're talking about leaving, I guess, a house that's quite large, like perhaps you were in the situation where you did buy a home when it was very low interest rates, and it's quite a big property, and potentially you don't need that much space, and you're going to get a decent amount of money in rental. Particularly more valuable if you have the option of, say, moving in with family, moving in with friends, renting somewhere else where your cost of rent is actually going to be lower than, say, the cost of your ongoing mortgage. Yep. There's a couple of caveats to this. One, of course, is that you're going to need to pay tax on the rental income. So you need to consider how that would play out in comparison to just paying your mortgage and owning that cost. But, if you are looking at all different ways to essentially level out your cash flow situation or figure out options, then it's definitely an option on the card. Yep. As is, if you have space, looking at getting a boarder or having a flatmate for a period of time, or having a family member move in with you, that then they can pay, you some rent and they're not paying some other costs or whatever that might be. So trying to get a little bit creative about that. I feel like that's a more preferable option than looking at the case of just straight selling and downsizing, or needing to, get out of the property altogether.
Yeah, nice. And what about adjusting your mortgage or mortgage repayments or things like that? In terms of also, does the frequency of which you pay your mortgage impact Like, could you?
A little bit, only in the sense that if you pay monthly versus if you pay fortnightly, you have more payments over a fortnight period than you do a month, but it's not necessarily going to be hugely material. It is absolutely worthwhile sitting down and seeing if you can do things like go on to interest only for a period of time, whilst that's not advisable long term, because of course, in order to get more equity in your property, you need to be paying down your principal. So that's definitely more a short-term option, but that's the kind of stuff that, if you found yourself like with out of work for a bit, or in a reduction in income, or in a situation where someone has taken time out of work to have a kid, and you actually need to significantly reduce your expenses, then that is an option. The caveat that I also say with this is it's not going to be as much as people think, because in a high interest rate environment, the thing that is significantly contributing to your cost of your mortgage is the interest rate and the change in interest rate. So the interest rate going from 3.5% to 7% is what is killing you right now. It's not the small amount of principal that has remained consistent in what you're paying, right? So it's kind of that challenge. But if it does mean, going to interest only for a period of time is what's ultimately going to help, I think the bank would probably need to also see you making cuts in other areas, across your budget, or at least looking at how you allocate your spending in order to also support that.
Yeah, cool. But definitely worth a conversation with your
for
bank
sure.
or
a broker.
Advisor.
Exactly. Exactly.
Nice
Looking at getting creative. Absolutely. I mean, ultimately banks don't want to be foreclosing on people, so they're going to try and work with you to create some kind of solution, but part of that will be you also coming to the table with,
halfway.
Exactly. And an overall review of being prepared to look through your budget and expenses in general.
Nice. Love it. Cool. And then, so other things are don't fall victim to loyalty tax. So could be a great time to check in on how much your providers basically for things like power, water, mobile phone, insurance, and even investment providers, things like KiwiSaver fees, is that kind of killing your return?
Over returns.
And you can negotiate with the provider too. You could, if you've been a loyal customer, say tempt that, dangle the
we're going to leave kind of thing.
What can you do for me kind of thing? Yes. Or maybe they'll price match. You never know. Just ask the question. Worth having that, because that could free up some cash.
Absolutely.
Changing what you buy. So it's just also really downgrading the quality.
Brand loyalty to brand foods is a big one, right?
Like New World versus Pack and Save.
Correct.
What
or
is really
even
the difference?
within the supermarkets, like buying home brand versus buying name branded stuff for certain things. And I think practically for me, that is the first thing that I'm like, at the moment we have this kind of ridiculous internal debate in our household where we're really tied to one particular brand of milk that is definitely at the upper end of cost. It's not like the, Countdown Woolworths brand of milk. And the reason is because it's in a white bottle. And so the story behind it is because the plastic that it's in is not opaque, the milk lasts longer. And it's because it doesn't get light. And so someone was saying this to me and they were like, but that's only a real issue if you leave your milk out on the bench a lot. If it's in the fridge, chances of that happening are really low. I am thinking, okay, well, we should probably buy the cheap milk. We also go through milk so fast.
Lily's chugging them down.
Literally, there's just no point. But then every now and again, I will get up in the morning to make a coffee, and Luke would have gotten up during the night and made Lily a bottle, and the milk's been left out on the bench. But then the irony is it's pitch black, so there's not even any light anyway.
It's not like it's in the middle of the day.
I know, but I was like, I feel like we should do it, but also that we require some behavioural change in our household to make sure that we're not just shooting ourselves in the foot. But yes, that's just a really stupid example, because everything else we do, I feel like outside of maybe some specific items I was going to say butter, but not even butter. Maybe
bread as well. It's
true.
Vogels
We do
versus,
have brand loyalty to bread, and I have brand loyalty to yogurt. It's weird.
Definitely.
But say pasta or tinned vegetables.
Tinned vegetables is a good one.
Okay, because tell me more.
Well, it's
you have brand loyalty to tinned vegetables.
I saw a reel the other day that was talking about getting the mutti. Is it the MUTTI Italian tomatoes or something?
Yes,
and they're just so much more expensive than the like typical Waddies brand or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't buy those, but
I
sometimes
don't even buy
when I'm feeling-
Waddies. I just buy straight, no branded.
nice.
For tinned
The countdown,
tomatoes.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh, actually, okay. So someone was saying that it's the percentage of tomatoes in the can,
as opposed to water, like water tomato
basically.
percentage.
So I think the Countdown brand or something has 20%. Oh no, sorry, 70% tomatoes, whereas the Mutty ones are like 90 or 95. And I was like, okay, so you're technically getting 20% more tomatoes.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, that's really in the detail.
Yeah, okay. But I think brand loyalty is a thing because as hopefully I've been a really great example of, like, it's very pervasive in your mind. You know, it's almost subconscious to a degree. Like, I would never have thought to stop buying Vogels because it's kind of like, I think for us it would more be we're just not going to buy bread, or we're just going to change what we eat entirely.
Recipes,
yes, exactly. Or we'll be more planned so we don't have like food wastage, which is obviously something you should consider even outside of cost of living. But let's be honest, like that happens with everybody. So it's that kind of stuff, trying to be a bit more planned and sorted, and not necessarily loyal to stuff. The other thing is specials. Like, I'm just going to call Luke out on this because, you know, that's what we do on the show. But he is that person that, and I don't want to say that this is a gendered thing because I don't think it is, but I do think it's
I'm about to relate to Luke.
Individual. Is that like he will just grab what he sees on the shelf at the supermarket. He won't do the assessment of like, on the shopping list, I need to buy frozen corn. So I will assess like what one is on special and what's the price per unit based on all the different sizes and what brand am I going to get so that it's the cheapest. I do that, like constant mental maths.
Like especially for eggs.
I do it for everything though. You have to. I just otherwise feel like I'm, I don't know, getting cheated by the system. Whereas Luke's more of a like, I'll just grab one, and if it's on special, great, but like I'll just kind of grab the thing and not think about it so much.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you in this camp.
Thank
Definitely
you.
got to do the mental math.
Thanks.
So I reckon it all adds up. Oh, it's also like using countdown cards, you know, like
Oh
and
my
getting
gosh.
the discounts and stuff. Okay, I
This
don't
has
use
changed
it,
my life.
But
Christine.
it's because I always go shopping with Ollie and he always has his, and I'm like, fine.
But you
can
could
have
link them
everything.
together. You could get
Can
his
you?
on, and they have an app now.
the
It's
reward
so
thing. Yeah,
good.
that's
The
true.
rewards thing.
Yeah, I do have
Okay,
that, yeah.
I honestly, my biggest life regret since moving to New Zealand is not getting a Countdown rewards card for the first 5 years that we lived here. Kind of just thinking that they're a scam, because let's be honest, the Faro one is a total sham. You get nothing, so I don't even bother with that one.
So
but
true.
the Countdown one, holy moly.
Yeah.
Like, I have missed out on too many $15 vouchers in my
Yes.
lifetime from not having used it. And now I am like anal retentive about, I
Where's the card?
basically
Where's the
am
card?
like, I'm not checking out unless I have the card. So yes, get
You
your
can
free
also
points.
you can do like the sticker things that they have at the New World, you know,
Yes,
like if they have
yeah.
those promotions, you can
Yeah.
get new pans. That's
Exactly.
cost savings.
I
Yeah.
know. I feel like there's probably more people that are way better at this. I need to get more into it, but yes. Okay.
Ollie's very good at this.
So
I'm sorry.
groceries, big expenses.
Yeah.
Yes. What
I
about
have another one?
Yes.
So I think this brand loyalty also like extends to cars. Because if you think about, you know, it's like buying a European brand versus a Honda or a Toyota or something that the parts are really easy to replace.
Yes.
And also gas, like, you know, some cars are worse on gas, but then it's also kind of the argument of like older versus newer cars as well in terms of their fuel efficiency, and all of that stuff kind of adds up over time. So, and then having one car versus two, is it worth getting rid of
Absolutely.
one? Yeah, but that brand loyalty, I think, can play out in chunkier expenses as well. Because if you were to downgrade your car for a short time, then maybe that would free up a couple grand, or you know, something like that.
Of ongoing expenses for maintenance and everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely worth considering. I like your suggestion here about downgrading holidays, and I think that's important because even if people feel like, okay, cost of living is really high, holidays aren't even on the radar. I think it's more a broader conversation of like, how do you reposition discretionary and fun in your life in a period of time where you feel like perhaps you can't fit that into your budget, and being okay with the fact that, you know, because you don't do something now or for the next 12 months doesn't mean you can't ever do those things in the future. And it's a-okay to find other ways that don't cost money to recharge, re-energize, spend time with your family, like connect with people. It's also really hard to be honest with people about that. So I think, you know, a bit of empathy to those that feel in that situation, or feel like they're perhaps missing out on things, but being able to just say, hey, actually, you know, I do need to take some time out, and I've got paid leave to do so, but maybe paid leave for me this year just looks like having a week at home to chill out, go for walks, like enjoy sleeping in, catching up on Netflix, whatever it might. I mean, please don't maybe cancel your Netflix subscription if your plan is to stay home and do that.
We're going for walks to the park, right?
Yes, but you know, maybe it's that, or maybe it's like going and spending some time with family. Like, you know, I mean, that also may not be a holiday. I don't know. You get my drift. Or going camping, saving your annual leave for a summer period or an off-peak season.
Or you could also go away with a group because the economies of scale usually means that it's going to be cheaper. Or you stay
particularly with travel and like carpooling
something.
with people, and then splitting accommodation, food, all that kind of stuff. Definitely adds up.
Yeah, Ollie and I have decided to do this with our holiday. We've just decided that we're downgrading it to
Great.
Yeah, and I mean, I acknowledge that it's privileged that we are taking a holiday this year. But we've decided that we're just going to keep it local and stay North Island as well, so that we don't have to pay for flights to South Island. But
Love that for you.
Yeah, I know.
Love that for you. So yes, decreasing expenses. Tricky but important one, and I think also the logical starting point. What about increasing income? Because it's really easy to focus on the negatives. Decreasing things feels very negatives in this time of, you know, situation, budget. So what about increasing income? Particularly when we are hearing, Christine, that employers maybe are being a bit stricter on pay rises, or it's like an employer's market at the moment and there are still redundancies and other things going on, fairly commonplace.
Yeah, so I would pick up on that and say, like, a lot of the, I guess, research that we did suggested, you know, potentially changing jobs to get a chunkier pay rise or just asking for a pay rise at work. But I want to acknowledge that it is an employer's market, and so it's not it's easier said than done, and it's a very competitive time out there. So if you're potentially, maybe that's not a viable option right now. But some other things that you could do are love a side hustle. So the question that I'd pose is, are there ways that you can upskill for free online? So things like, you know, an example being digital marketing, which is a really common one that you can then pick up as a side hustle or do some contracting work. There's also things like Askable, so user research, where you don't have to upskill or train. You literally just need to be a human that wants to give an hour of their time and get paid for it, basically. You can also do things like promotional work. You know, I actually, when I was 18, I used to do that and stand in the supermarket and do the
taste
lollies.
testing.
It was fun. So that's one. And then also you could sell things. So sell old clothes. Are there things that you can chuck on Trade Me? Just like
selling stuff in your house, right? It's the whole Trade Me campaign that they were running last year about like the regular Kiwi has something like $5,000 worth of stuff in their home that they can just basically sell.
Pretty good.
You just need to find the effort and time.
Yeah, which isn't that hard. I don't
it's
think.
actually not that hard. I think we're just inherently lazy. I mean, speaking from personal experience.
Yeah, that's true.
Particularly also, I will give a shout out here, like kids. I'm going to say this as a parent of someone that has a young child. Like, we are so guilty of holding on to things just in case we're going to use them for a future child, right? And it's like, we don't have any immediate plans to have that future child. And ultimately, we also don't know if that future child is going to be a girl. So wouldn't it, I should really listen to my own advice, but like, isn't it better to just, you know, sell some of the stuff, rotate it through, sell some of the stuff, get money in the bank now that can help like keep up with the cost of buying new clothes and other things for Lily and daycare, which is costs we're incurring now, versus holding on to potentially, you know, a fairly chunky amount of baby kids items for 2, 3, 4 years and potentially even forget that we have them.
And on the other side of that, if you are pregnant or you are like looking to buy those things, perhaps consider secondhand. So you could be the buyer of cat selling.
Oh my gosh. If one wants any girls things, just actually DM me. Got lots of stuff.
Instagram's going to blow up. So another thing is also, if you do have an emergency fund or any money or a buffer, just make sure that it's working for you, like towards the goal that you're working
towards. High interest rates, better savings accounts out there right now, people.
Cash funds if it's short-term, long-term investments. So any idle cash, just make sure, even if it is for short-term usage, you can be earning return.
Definitely.
So that's
definitely
important.
Love this.
Yeah,
love this.
Now, third category is extra/rogue things that we could do
to free up cash or just take advantage of free things. Lots of free things out there if you look for them.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to do a bit of research. So this first one is over to you.
Okay, so we are really big advocates of Tend Health, which for anyone that doesn't know is essentially an online and in-person physical digital doctor service. They have an app. They, if you enroll, have a lot of like benefits to them, particularly at the moment. They're predominantly Auckland based, but they have moved out to Bay of Plenty recently and are moving into more regional areas as well. They have some services. Well, for one, they have a really easy way to book in for different services based on what you need, and then you only pay for that service. So rather than booking in for a GP for something that potentially could be discussed with a nurse and therefore could be a shorter and cheaper appointment, you have the option to actually book in for those specific requirements, which for me, super win.
Great, yeah.
The second thing is that recently, having gone there and had a chat with one of their GPs around like wellbeing and just mental health, they highlighted that they actually have a free wellbeing service for their enrolled patients, which is essentially unlimited. You can, I think they're kind of basically a health practitioner. It's an add-on. You can see them in person or you can see them online through the app, and it's a service where rather than necessarily needing to go down like paid counselling or paid sessions with a medical professional, you can have some essentially wellbeing like coaching and check-ins with someone to start pointing you in the right direction if it's like mental or physical wellbeing that you need to get a bit of a grasp on, which I think is really important in this time, because it's of course very easy to feel very stressed out or not as strong like mentally when you're feeling a little bit under the pressure or underwater financially. So getting help in that space is really important. Shout out Tend. We love you.
Yes.
Christine and I love you.
I also use it. Big fan.
Actually, the other thing I will also say, because I think this is important and it does get a bit of airtime, is Tend, because you can see a doctor, obviously not for everything online, but a lot of things online, gives you the actual genuine flexibility to go to the doctor and not necessarily take a day or time off work. So we have in our team, we've talked about this with people before, where it's like, hey, you know, you're a bit under the weather and you probably need to get some prescriptions or check in with a doctor or whatever it might be. But if you book an online appointment, I actually had one the other day and I was like, Christine, I've got an appointment in 5 minutes, gotta like podcast, cut this meeting short, because I could go into a like quiet, safe space in our office, didn't need to leave, had a 15-minute consult. Like I don't need to take any time off work for that. That's a bit of a game changer for people that, you know, would otherwise need to take time off or structure that around, you know, paid work hours. That's a huge thing. So shout out them for that.
Yeah, nice. Love
Awesome.
that. Love
Okay.
it. On the note of
employee wellbeing or just wellbeing?
Yes. Wellbeing. We have another line item here.
See what your employer offers. So I think oftentimes, you know, you join a new company and you kind of like get the intro pack and then you read about all the employee benefits and then you kind of forget about it, right? Particularly if you're in some kind of big corporate or even a medium-sized organization where perhaps there's not a HR or culture team kind of banging on about it all the time. So if you find yourself in a situation where you are struggling in any kind of capacity, whether it's financial, mental, like with your health, I would really encourage people, as you said before, like reach out to your employer, reach out to your manager. You don't necessarily need to divulge all the information with them. You know, you can keep it like confidential and just say, hey, actually I'd be interested to see what kind of support does this organization already have for these different things. Really, really great one is often health insurance, because that is a real privilege to be able to have. And particularly if you don't need to pay it, will pay for it, then that's awesome. Something like EAP, so an employee assistance program, which in some organizations offers, say, mental wellbeing support or the access to like counselors or psychologists, but can also extend to financial wellbeing. I have heard of some EAP programs offering or partnering with like money coaches and budgeting support services to help their employees get through financially challenging times. Often as well, if a workplace is going through a period of workplace change, they're more likely to have support in this space. You know, they're more likely to be conscious of like, okay, hey, we have just let go of some people and maybe there'll be a sense of nervousness amongst the remaining team, or they know it's a bit of a challenging time. So we have the ability to invest in this. So absolutely have a look at what you may be entitled to from employee benefits, also down to discounts. Because I will say this, like with a husband husband that works at Air New Zealand, there is a whole online page that they have in their intranet that talks through every single kind of corporate level discount that they have with lots of different stuff. And they frequently change. So you do have to check back in because it's stuff like
no leaming and stuff.
Or different gym promos, different physio promos, different sometimes there's lots of travel ones, there's things for school holidays, there's kids based, there's health and well-being, like there's a whole range, right? And so it is quite good to just check and be like, that's maybe something I'm already paying for. Why don't I tell them that I'm associated with this company and then I'll get a discount?
Exactly. Especially Ollie's brother is a teacher, and I remember him saying that all teachers get or maybe at his school, a discount off no leaming things, or like certain kind of
perfect
brands they can get a discount on, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Even like in the building that we're in, there's
shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Can you tell us?
We get it. Yeah, we get a little building discount. So there's a really great shoe shop in our building, and they were like, "You're in the building. We love you guys." A little like discount on what you're buying. So that's pretty fun.
Yeah, nice.
What else would we look at? Government support. Where do I start, Christine?
Government support. So, well, firstly, we've just
done an episode on tax.
It'll be either coming before or after this episode around the government changing the tax bracket slightly, and then also giving some relief to families, like a family boost, which can equate to up to $75 a week for childcare support. And then the brackets, the maximum is around $40-ish per fortnight that you can receive extra, depending on your tax bracket. So that's one thing. And then government support outside of that could be things like accommodation supplements, working for families. There's also a recent announcement from the IRD stated that there was unclaimed money, so you could be a recipient of that.
Have you checked this? We've not talked about
Ollie's
this.
sister was getting like $1,500 back or something.
Yeah,
I haven't checked it.
Luke and I have gone on the Unclaimed Money's website. It's really easy. You can literally, I think it's an actual IRD website, but basically Unclaimed Money's IRD, just Google it. What you have to do is, so you can search for and claim unclaimed monies. So you search via your name. You can search for anybody. So we searched for ourselves and there was nothing there. Yeah. And I think it's because that kind of makes sense for us and probably makes sense a little bit for you guys if there's nothing there, because I reckon you're more likely to have a hit rate if you have been working longer and you've been based in New Zealand for a long period of time, because there's often, in order for it to be unclaimed monies, it needs to have sat with the provider for more than 5 years, and then it gets passed to the IRD. So there needs to be like a history element. So I didn't tell you guys, but I pretty much searched for like the whole team, and I was like, oh my God, well, Tim doesn't have any unclaimed monies because Tim's not been working for that long. That clocks out. Like, why would he have not claimed something for 5 years? Yeah. Real classic one is, of course, there's lots of unclaimed money there from bonus bonds. When that closed down, then has been passed to the IRD. But we went through tons of people within our whole family. We found one person that had unclaimed money from bonus bonds of a couple of $100. And then we were just like typing in like our friends' names and stuff. And we found for one of our neighbours, $5,000. Oh, like there are significant sums of money there. There are some that are like $20,000, $30,000, all sorts of stuff. So of course, if you find, it just shows you the name and the financial institution and the amount, and then you need to go through a step-by-step process of basically proving who you are, and so that they can obviously try and validate whether or not this is actually your money. So chances are, if it still said like Christine Jensen, it's possibly going to be another Christine Jensen. So, you do have to pass through a few more hurdles to actually get the money. But it's, definitely something. There's heaps of money there. Oh, really? Like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
I need my slice now. I'm definitely not eligible.
But good thing for like, go and check for your parents and your like siblings and family and household, and definitely go and see.
Shout your neighbour a free 5K surprise.
I know. They were like, what is this? And we're like, no, seriously, you should go check it out.
Here's the link. Love that. That's awesome. There's also some more things like every year we get a government contribution to our KiwiSaver. So if you deposit a certain amount, there's just dig around on the IRD website to understand, or potentially just Google it really.
Yeah,
there's heaps of options there.
Definitely.
Love it. On coming back to the mortgage piece, one question that I did have, if you are potentially struggling with your mortgage repayments in terms of, and let's say you're up for renew, what do you do? Like, I mean, this is not financial advice or mortgage advice.
You're like,
but I mean, splitting your mortgage, it's fixed versus floating, because are you like, and if you're at a time where it is a bit of a struggle, is it better to have the certainty? Is there things to consider?
So true. There definitely is things to consider. I think the first point that I would say, if you are feeling like you're going to struggle with your mortgage rolling off onto a higher rate, definitely go chat to your broker first. I think a lot of people go to the bank, and I would say go to a broker first, because the bank's only going to give you a view of what they can offer you. A broker's going to give you a view of like what is on the market, give you a sense of, well, is this, a particular rate that's being offered by your bank, or is this something that is, across the wider market, and therefore is something that maybe you need to kind of stomach or deal with for a period of time. They're also going to give you a sense of how likely a bank is going to look at your scenario and want to negotiate or offer things like interest only periods or that kind of stuff. Because I think the thing that people don't necessarily understand with interest only periods is the bank has to go through an assessment of, if we let you go on to interest only for 5 years and the term of your mortgage is 25 years, that's only going to leave 20 years in which you can repay that full principal. So they need to then go through an assessment to make sure that you have the amount of money in order to repay the principal off the remaining time period, as opposed to calculating whether or not you can just repay the principal off a 25-year period. Right. And so depending on where you're at with the term of your mortgage, your like cycle of being employed in terms of, how many more years you have, all that kind of stuff, it can factor into it. And of course, for how much you're asking to go on to interest free. Oh, sorry, not interest free. Everyone wishes. To like interest only, right? So if you're asking for a small portion to go on to interest only, going to be easier. But if you're asking for your entire mortgage to go on to interest only, potentially going to be a little bit harder. So definitely chat with a broker on that piece.
Yeah. Nice. Love it. Great tips. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. But I do think like getting some certainty is a good thing, particularly if the certainty means that you can, I don't want to say be forced into a budget, but if you're in the situation where you're feeling like it's going to be really hard, then you probably do need to be forced into a budget. And, having the certainty at least is like, okay, we know this much will be our mortgage, therefore we have this amount to bills, food, other stuff as well.
Bit more structure. So,
exactly.
Nice. Okay, cool. Last two things. Weighing up spending to save. So, i.e. getting a fee for a service financial plan, which could include things like ongoing accountability to do things like what you've just said around the budget, which inadvertently could reduce your expenses and increase income. So let's say the cost was a couple thousand for the plan, but it inadvertently freed up $10,000 because you reduced your expenses and all that kind of stuff. Like, is that a viable option?
Yeah, I think definitely a viable option to look at that. And also thinking about if you do need some help, like there are a lot of services out there that provide, like Citizens Advice Bureau, that provide free budgeting services. There's lots of independent like areas that provide free budgeting services as well, if that's kind of your starting point. Whereas if you feel like, okay, actually I am in an okay position, but I feel like I may be going a little bit backwards, or I'm not moving forwards, and I want to invest some money in making sure I actually move forwards from here, then absolutely great idea to chat to an accountant, chat to an advisor, chat to someone, particularly if you're a business owner, making sure that you're getting the right kind of structural advice around your income and how you're working and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah,
love it. And so then if you are at the point, I guess, where you've exhausted all the other options and you're potentially looking, maybe you have money in your KiwiSaver, what are the options for financial hardship withdrawals?
Great question. So financial hardship withdrawals are available from all KiwiSaver providers. They are very much kind of the very end point of, I guess, an emergency situation. So part of going through a hardship application requires you to provide proof that you're essentially in arrears on a whole heap of things. So it's not just I'm about to be, or I think in 6 months' time I will be. It's sort of a like, I'm already here, I'm in the red, I'm having trouble to pay my bills. Like I've talked to the bank and this is now really kind of my only option.
Yeah.
And you have to provide proof. So that's the other thing. You basically need to provide the whole context and an application to your KiwiSaver provider. They will determine how much you are entitled to be paid out, if at all.
Yeah.
So they'll essentially assess it. The easiest, I think, kind of area that obviously makes a lot of sense is that trustees of KiwiSaver providers or the supervisors, like they don't want people to be homeless and out on the street, right? Yeah. So if it's a situation where, you know, you're in such financial turmoil that you're likely to default on your mortgage and therefore at risk of being like removed from your home, and you have money in your KiwiSaver that could pay your mortgage for a period of time, then that's the type of situation that they would look at. Yeah. Similarly, if you're renting somewhere and you're really struggling to afford your rent and you're needing to, you know, let's say like get a car and cover your car bills in order to get to work, to get yourself out of these types of financial situations, then that's the type of stuff they look at. And I think historically, looking at across hardship withdrawals in the past, the feedback that we have had at Kernel from our supervisor is that in the last year or last 2 years, there've been a little bit more understanding across the board for people going through situations as a result of increased cost of living and increasing debt, repayments, interest rates, all that kind of stuff, and are a little bit more open to, I guess, providing relief in order to keep people afloat than they would have been 5 years ago, because it was a different situation 5 years ago. And so it's certainly not something that we would like encourage lots of people to be doing, because of course the primary purpose of your KiwiSaver is to ensure that you have some money for retirement. And so that is why there's quite a high threshold to kind of overcome and requirement to prove your exact situation.
Yeah, nice. Does it work that they would potentially only allow you to have, like, let's say you had to prove that your mortgage was X amount and then you need that money to cover it for 6 months or a year or whatever, but then but in your KiwiSaver balance you have more than that total amount? Would they be like, okay, we're going to give you 20,000 and that's going to cover? They do that.
They do that.
Not the full amount.
No. Very rare that they'll pay out the full amount, and actually very rare that like they'll necessarily pay out everything that you're asking for unless you have a very specific reason and like bills associated. So one example where I know like essentially the exact amount was paid out was a really like tragic situation where someone's child was going through like emergency medical treatment, and it actually ended up being that child passed away. And so as like for that situation, there were a lot of unexpected bills at a known amount, and then there were funeral costs at a known amount. So in that situation, those entire costs were covered under a financial hardship claim. Whereas if it was, say, something like I'm struggling to pay my mortgage, they're probably not going to pay you out 12 months of your mortgage repayments because you might not be struggling in 6 months' time or even 4 months' time, and that's not necessarily super prudent. So it's also not uncommon that if that's kind of the basis of your claim, they might pay you out to get you through like 2 or 3 months and then reassess, and then you're going to need to reapply. So it's certainly not a like entire get out of jail free card for the next 12 months. It's a case of we're going to keep the lights on and keep you afloat, but you're still going to need to do the things to try and move forward in a way that's getting yourself out of the situation as well. Because of course your KiwiSaver is not an endless pot of money, and the supervisors take their job very seriously of making sure that it's seen that way, and the fact that people need to be working where they can to get themselves out of those situations rather than just exhausting retirement savings.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a bit of a delay as well to get that out, isn't there?
Well, of course, because and I think that's the other thing that maybe people sometimes forget is they think, well, this could be instantaneous, and it's like, well, hey, actually, you know, for you to just get the paperwork together, sign a stat dec, like get that your ducks in order are probably going to take, even if you're speedy, let's say it takes 1-2 days for you to do that. You need to send it through to the provider. It has to go to the supervisor of that provider. It's not assessed by your provider directly. They then have their own kind of financial hardship team that will review that application. They might have questions. They might need more proof. They might be like, we're not so sure about this. So there could be some back and forth on other requirements.
Yeah.
And then once it's approved, it still needs to obviously be sold down from your KiwiSaver funds and paid out,
True, yeah.
which that process could take a week. So let's say, I would say at a minimum, you're looking at probably 2 to 3 weeks in the fastest time frame for it to be assessed and paid out. And more cases than not, it's potentially faster than that. There's, of course, always instances where it could be sped up for really, really dire situations. But, the standard thing is it's like, hey, it's not the same as, you get a credit card and can pay a bill tomorrow.
Yeah, nice. Cool. So then let's say, coming back to all these ideas to free up cash, essentially. If by the time you've done everything above, you've managed to free up some cash, what should you do with that? You mentioned earlier, absolutely, if you're in the situation with the mortgage repayments, consider paying off some of the principal.
Yes.
What else?
I think, making sure you have some buffers. So we obviously talk a lot about emergency funds, making sure that you have some savings sitting there for a rainy day, particularly because so many lump sum costs of living like power bills, water bills, are going up, insurance bills, that kind of stuff. And they're the chunkier bills. Like if you think of, say, your car insurance or your house insurance, that really catch people off guard. So making sure that you're putting some more money aside for that. Obviously paying off any consumer debt, trying to get rid of credit cards and remove your reliance on those where possible. If you get to the place of not needing to rely on them, do the simple things like remove them from your wallet so you're not tempted to use them unless it's an absolute must. That kind of thing. And then absolutely when you feel like you're back on even keel, making sure that if you do have a mortgage, you're back onto principal and interest repayments as soon as possible. And if you are renting or in a situation where you're not paying off a mortgage and you feel like you're back on even keel, making sure that you're kind of consistently saving where you can to also move forward. And create a bit of a, I don't want to say, bulletproof-ish plan for this to not necessarily happen again.
Yeah, nice. Love it. Great tips. Thank you.
No worries.
Cool. Well, if you enjoyed this episode or you'd like to know a little bit more about where we gathered the information, we'll chuck some links in the show notes. A lot of this was from MoneyHub. Big shout out to them. But otherwise, you can find us at It's No Secret NZ on Instagram. Kat and I will be in the DMs. We also, if you have any other future episode requests or like general
in
questions,
for the Q&A episodes coming up soon. We would love to know what's on your mind, answer a few questions,
send them our way.
Exactly. But definitely great chatting about this. I feel like hopefully it's not too doom and gloom, because I feel like there is a lot of focus on like the doom and gloom, and it is challenging as well. And so trying to find some positivity regardless of where your financial situation is at is also really important, because money can get you down so quickly. And it's important to remember that there's a lot of life to be lived regardless of your financial situation, and tough times don't always last long. So
and there's lots of resources out there, free resources that can help, like this podcast, so keep listening.
And on that fun note,
we will see you next week.
Okay, bye.